Today we're interviewing Tim Nelson. Let's start again. I need to put my glasses on. Sorry. Today we are interviewing Tim Nelson. Tim has completed one term on council and is standing as an independent in the General Ward. Welcome, Tim, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Lyn. Thanks for having me.
What motivated you to stand, and what do you bring to the role?
Okay, I'm going to read from my notes if that's okay, because I don't want to miss anything out. Right, I chose to come to live in Masterton in 1998 after having completed my first 2 years of teaching in Lower Hutt at Wilford School. To my wife Lisa and I, Masterton represented real New Zealand, a mixture of cultures and socio-economic groups, essentially making it a diverse place to live. We had been coming to the Wairarapa for years before that, but like Masterton most because of the services it provided, and also the school I was coming to work in was MIS. Since then, I've worked in 5 schools, 3 of which I've been the principal. My 2 daughters were both born here and grew up here, and are now making their own ways in life currently as university students. They've both benefited immensely from having childhoods in this particular town. Over the last 23 years, I've become increasingly passionate about our district. The children I have taught in the late 1990s and early 2000s are now parents of the children that I'm teaching today at Lakeview School. I really want to do all I can to ensure that they, along with everyone else who lives here, are provided with the services and systems that enriches their lives. I've got a really different view to most people on wellbeing. I really believe that it's achieved by having the basics upon which the foundations can be built. Things like infrastructure that works, essential services that are accessible, an outdoor environment that provides opportunity for recreation, and public facilities such as a high quality library, a social equaliser that helped my family when I grew up, being 4 key examples. I have a knowledge of strategic planning that I feel makes me a really effective counsellor, and even more so heading into the next term. This comes from leading 2 schools, St Mary's School in Masterton and Lakeview School now, where I've had considerable success over the last 10 years. Lakeview in particular is a school that runs on a multi-million-dollar budget and a staff of over 50. In leading both the schools, the Board of Trustees and I are always focused on providing quality programs that were within our means, and every decision based upon the strategic direction of the school, which I really feel should be the absolute priority for the council. Another thing that I bring to the role is the experience that I've had over the last 3 years as a first-term councillor. To be honest, I wasn't fully aware of everything that being a councillor involved, and planned initially just to sit back for a little bit and learn from others. However, I soon realised that my expectations and values weren't the same as others, and that I needed to be strong with what I felt was best for our community from the very start. An example of this was meeting with the CEO, the Mayor and the Deputy Mayor on the morning of the vote about the Town Hall facade. It was clear what their view was as a vote on the issue, and the recommendation from the council report shows, but I take pride in my vote, which is a key reason why the iconic structure is still here today, and I'm now sure it'll be part of any future decisions. The next words may sound like catchphrases, Lyn, but I'm going to say them anyway. But I really do believe that I have the integrity, knowledge and experience to continue to be an extremely effective councillor, and will do the very best for our district.
Great, thank you. Look, let's talk about rates.
Yep.
So first of all, do you know what the median wage is for people of Masterton?
I know what the average means, total family income. It's $91,000, but to me that means there's a lot of people earning a lot less than that. And I've got a really good understanding of people who do struggle, because I'm the principal of Lakeview School, which is a Decile 2 school. Almost a great proportion of our catchment is from the Cameron block, and those people who are living on benefits, not all of them, but a lot of them living on benefits, or they're living off low-paid jobs. So I do understand what it means to struggle. And to me, just in regards to to rates in general. To me, it's more about what we focus on as opposed to what we get rid of in regards to managing rates. And the 4 areas mentioned in my earlier answer, which are infrastructure that works, essential services that are accessible, an outdoor environment that provides opportunities for recreation, and good quality public facilities, are the sorts of things that we need to focus on. And as unexciting as it sounds, infrastructure is the key area. Yep, growth can be good, but not if it comes at the risk of overloading the capacity of our current systems. And why is there an expectation of always increasing rates? Why not instead focus on the key priorities and addressing them with the funding that we already have? I come from poverty, real poverty, having been raised in a family of 13 children in Paparamu. I remember the pressure and stress of any increased cost that it put on my parents who were on a fixed income. My mum was a stay-home mum. What else could she have been with 13 children, and often 12 of them at home at the same time? And my father was a government employee, where every cent literally did count. I don't believe that a 6.8% rate increase forecast, I don't believe in that 6-point rate increase forecast, which is why I'm one of the 3 councillors who voted against the adoption of the annual plan. Our community should have had the opportunity to identify what they feel needed to be spending priorities and what areas aren't. This was denied to them, which I feel was a very poor decision, and I also feel it was quite patronising. We feel,
agree with you.
It's like we know best, and you guys can't have any input whatsoever.
Yes.
There needs to be a really careful analysis of staffing levels in the council, using the school analogy, and I have to use the school analogy because it's what I know best. We would definitely like to have more staff in key areas at, for example, Lakeview School, but we operate with an entitlement that's based on our school role. I strongly believe that there should be the same sort of formula for a council. I have asked, but apparently there isn't, which would mean more flexibility from current staff, as well as a key strategic reason for the justification, the creation of any new roles. If you look at a school, I'll just go without my notes here. We want to have more teachers in the classroom. That would be great. We'd like more teacher aides behind each students, and we would like more maintenance staff for our school. But we get a fixed amount that we can work with. We can go above that, but it means pulling resources from other areas from our operation grant. We could get away with having more teachers than we're entitled to for 1 year, and it might look good, but the next year we have to pay it back. And I think that councils need to have an understanding that ratepayers aren't this infinite source of funds. They are actually finite, but we're treating them as if they're infinite. So that's where I stand.
That's what it looks for us, yes. Yep. So, we think the council have so many projects on the go, far too many, for the amount of money that if you did have a fixed income, that you'd have to stick with that and forget the nice to have projects, stick to your basics, what you can afford, so that the rates will stop being increased every year to pay for all the fancy projects and the nice to have things and the extra staff that come with it, obviously. It's very, very difficult.
Well, it is, and there's always things you're going to want to have, but they're not simply accessible. Like, I would like to have, what would I like to have? I'd like to have a Tesla, but I don't have a Tesla, I have a Suzuki Ignis. It's what I can afford. I quite like my car, and it was bought within my means. I could have a Tesla if I wanted to, but it's going to put a lot of pressure on other areas of my life, and it's a pointless acquisition. It might look nice when I drive around in it, but aside from that, it's just going to put me under financial pressure.
So do you see that type of mentality in council or within the whole council structure of we can have what we want because we'll just charge a ratepayers for it, or is there some thinking about, well, no, we need to stick within our means? How does it work?
I really don't know. Maybe there's pet projects that come up, and there's decisions that are made that I'll give you an example of one. There was this must have been about 2 years ago, and there was a phone survey to find out, I can't remember what it was about, but it was going to cost $36,000, I think. And I voted against that survey taking place because it just seemed to be absolutely ridiculous at $36,000. And the way I see it sometimes is these little bits of money are seen as little bits of money, but they're
all cumulative.
Yeah, they are. And you look at, I remember an app was used to get feedback, I think, on playgrounds, and that app costs thousands of dollars. And the same thing could have been done with a bit of paper and a pen. And sometimes we just need to be a little bit more old school and be a little bit more creative with what we have. I mean, if you take, for example, and again, I'll use a school, managing the school's social media account at Lakeview School. When I became a principal, Facebook didn't even exist. Now I manage a social media account with Paul, my DP. It didn't exist when he started teaching either. We learn to do different things, and I think that there could be an opportunity for some council staff workers to be a little bit more flexible. Maybe they want to be flexible and do slightly different things. I think most people who work for council are really good people, and I don't think they deliberately overspend, but I think people just need to be a little bit more aware of how we're spending our money. And it is fortunate, you do get a lot of experience in a school. Lakeview is a big school. We do have 50 staff members. We do operate on a multi-million-dollar budget, and it's managed by myself and a group of board of trustees, and we use education services to help us from an accounting point of view. And we can manage, and if we can manage that sort of budget, a much bigger organisation can handle and manage a much bigger budget more effectively.
Yeah, so what we've seen over the last 3 years, in the last term, is the council numbers having doubled from 65 to 131, I think it's up to now, gone from 5 million in a wage bill to over 11 million in a wage bill. And so it seems to us that it's one job, one person. And we understand that there's jobs coming at you from, or requirements from central government that you have to carry out.
Yeah.
But you'd think more than one, one person could do more than one job, surely.
Yeah.
But that's from the outside, so we don't have visibility of how that recruitment process goes or what people's job descriptions are. But that's an awful lot of staff with a large wage bill that just seems ratepayers will pay. So there's no ending to it.
Yeah, well, someone has to pay, and in the end it's going to be ratepayers. And again, some of these things might look like good ideas, some of the initiatives that might be implemented, but they can really only happen if the money's available to run them.
Yeah, people are very, we're full of great ideas too.
Yep.
But as a new organisation, we don't have the finances to do it either. So you cut your cloth accordingly.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? You have cheap interviews in your own house or somebody's house, to do things on a shoestring budget.
Yep.
But you still hopefully will deliver the outcome that people are looking for. You don't have to spend a lot of money on things.
No, that's exactly how a well-run state school works.
Exactly. And that's what we'd like to see with council.
Yep.
Tim, let's talk about infrastructure. You've touched on it briefly there, but we've got large housing developments occurring in Masterton. We've got climate change causing more severe weather events, and ratepayers here living with portaloos, every time their streets flood, some for 8 to 10 years. Now, we fully expect significant water restrictions this summer, and our infrastructure is going to struggle more in future years. So how do you plan on addressing this issue, given that you've now had 3 years on council? What is the answer for you the next time round?
Well, infrastructure seems like such a boring topic, doesn't it? But, it's the most important thing of all. It really is. We need to prioritise resourcing on focusing on what really needs to be done now, as well as with a long-term lens on the future. And I'm currently advocating for a family that's had the Portaloo problem for 10 years. Not 8, 10 years. And the only reason I know about this is because the person's a parent at my school, and she came to me and about another issue and she spoke about this one, and I found it just absolutely astounding. And this tells me that that at their level, the level of that family, at an individual level, it hasn't been a priority. I do understand the big picture about fixing things like leaks and the stormwater pipes and doing so systematically. It has to be done. It has to be done at a big picture level. But the fact that a group of properties has had this issue for so long, for that long, suggests that it hasn't been an absolute priority that it should have been. 2 weeks ago, so I had no water for one night, which was a real hassle because there's a leak under my house. So we turned the water off. But if you compare it to that particular family and what they're going through, every time there's a heavy rain forecast, or every time they look in the paper and they see the rain clouds, 3 days' time, then the stress, it's unbelievable the amount of stress that they're going through. And like with infrastructure, there's this sense that I think things can happen at a regular timetable, but when things are really important, they can be sped up. And I think what I have learned about things like long-term plans and annual plans is that the council needs to be really more direct in saying that this is a priority. Things like the pipe infrastructure, which apparently progress has been made, and I've been told that by another councillor, things are happening, and there used to be apparently more properties with this issue. But if it's been going on for 10 years and it's gone on for way too long. And in terms of any large development shouldn't be looked at in isolation. There needs to be a real analysis of the wider infrastructure issues and the ability to cope with the pressure that's going to be put on other areas. For example, if a new housing development's going upstream somewhere, what's happening downstream, not just with that particular development. So we have to look at the bigger picture. And if there isn't the capacity in the system to manage what's happening everywhere, not just in the new development, then that infrastructure needs to be addressed first. Like, growth looks really good, and it's great to hear the word growth, and it's awesome that new people are coming to our town, and I know the population's increasing. But you can't build it on a foundation of sand. It's got to be built on really rock solid infrastructure. And again, it just sounds so boring, talking about infrastructure.
Well, it doesn't win votes either. No, it's underground, you can't see it.
It probably doesn't, but it has a huge impact on the well-being of these people. Like, it's not just this one family, it's a whole lot of people. And it's not just that one family, it's their friends, the people they talk to, the people that know how stressed out they are. It could be the teachers of the school where the children are and the stress that those kids are going through, and they'll bring that into school. And it's just so wrong. Looking at water infrastructure, I was rapt that the council bought that land in Upper Plain Road for water storage, and my understanding that it's increased the capacity tenfold. And from I think 3 days to 30 days when it's fully in place, and that's going to be really assuring that in the years to come with the impacts of things like climate change and how that's going to help with addressing those long hot summers when we have a lot of water restrictions as well. But infrastructure is probably what I'm running on, and who knows how many votes it will get me? Maybe not that many, but I just think it's just such a priority. And to be honest, before I stood for council, I just really thought about my own house and if things were working. But when you hear the stories of these people, it's pretty heartbreaking.
Yes.
And again, like I said, when I had without water for one night, and I could easily have just gone, and we turned it off ourselves, I could easily have just gone, and in fact I did turn it on in the morning when I wanted my coffee and my shower. They don't have the ability to do that.
No, that's right. So I think, we have them coming to us, our members come to us too.
Yeah.
Sometimes crying about having to wear gumboots out at night to go to a portaloo, to go to the toilet in the middle of the rain and these weather events themselves.
Yeah.
It's just not good enough. It sounds like a third world country.
It does.
And I think if a councillor had to put up with that, how quickly would they get the infrastructure outside their house done?
Yeah, it's hard to know, But I do know that the family I have the most to deal with, they have a dog. The dog can't go outside because it will run onto the back lawn.
Yes,
and on the back lawn they have things like toilet paper floating up, sanitary pads, raw sewage. That's on their lawn. And how can you live like that? And it's almost, what's the answer? If they can't live in that house, then perhaps that house should be condemned. If it's a place where you can't live safely, then why are we allowing people to live in those houses?
So what is the option? What is the options being given to these families?
Well, not a lot, just to really things like the portaloo. But what I would like to see, I met with their family and also another parent from my school who owns a local plumbing business, and we met with James Lyn. I've got to say James was pretty good, and we looked at the way things could happen, and we actually have come up with a bit of a plan. So I'm going to be contacting the CE and council staff about that plan and what could be done for that family. I don't know if it's going to work, because if there was a really, really simple option, I know that people in the council who are really good people, for so many of them, would have actually put it in place. But it was really good to have at that meeting the guy Rob from Waterwise, because it's hard, it's easier, you know, if I'm giving really complex information about infrastructure and pipes in town, I really don't know that, you know, I don't know what a lot of it means. It's like someone asking me about the best way to teach mathematics in a school to a year 8 student. Like, I know, but I could probably fob someone off with an answer that wasn't quite true.
Yes, you're not an engineer, is what you're saying. Or
no,
water engineer.
Not even close. I don't even know how to change one of those things.
A washer.
A washer. I don't even know how to do that. But what I do know is having Rob there was really good, and he was able to ask questions, and I'm hoping for some sort of outcome relatively quickly.
I think one of the points we make quite regularly, actually, amongst ourselves especially, is Masterton needs to build Masterton, and Masterton people know how to solve these problems.
Yep.
You know, so if we talk about Three Waters a little bit, you know, if Three Waters is pushed onto us and some entity from outside of Masterton has to deal with all this infrastructure problem, they're not going to understand the pipes and underground services that have been designed around Masterton, whereas Masterton people do, the plumbers, you know, the engineers who live here and work here. So it's important for us to try and retain all that infrastructure ourselves if we can, but I think it's going to get forced on us. So what is your view on the Three Waters proposal?
Three Waters to me is a real tough one. What I can say, to be honest, when it first came out and we had people like, I can't remember the guy's name, he came to speak to us from LGNZ, and it seemed like the best idea in the world, the way he explained it to us. And he gave us lots of information about the cost benefits of a town the size, taking on Three Waters. But, and what I can say is, because things are at the position that they are now, with people like these families, then something definitely has to change, because this sounds like it's been talked about and gone on about for 20 years. And if that's the case, then whatever happens, it needs to be different to what's happening now. My concerns with something like Three Waters is that a family, again at this individual level, will be pushed further down the chain as bigger things become more of a priority, and potentially in other areas. So what I'd say about Three Waters is, I mean, I really respect someone like David Holmes. He's a guy I have a lot of respect for. And David doesn't think it's a great idea, and I have to listen to what a guy like David's saying, and there's going to be reasons why. But I do know that there's definitely things that have to change about the way things have been managed and operated for a long period of time to get us to the point where we are today. So it's a bit of a, I don't want to sound like I'm sitting on the fence over this, but what we've got in place isn't great. What's being imposed upon us doesn't sound like it's that great either. So there just has to be a middle way, and I can't tell you what it is. I did speak to the guy from the leader of TOP, the political party. He spoke about it when I went to a presentation that he had, and his suggestion was something along the way with the way roads are managed, where the council gets uses funding, and the government puts in maybe an equivalent amount of money, and still the council manages their own assets. But whatever happens, we're at a point that's really untenable, and it astounds me also that a political party, and I'm pretty apolitical, can come up with a proposal that got so many people's backs up. And the proposal seems to be changing as it goes along, and made up as it goes along, and extra funding's being put in for all sorts of things. It just seems like it was really poorly thought out. What I can say is that $3.88 million, so we had workshops around that.
Yep.
We had 18 options, I think it was. I crossed off every option on it, and just had water infrastructure as being the only thing that money should be spent on if we take it. Things like a mobile library would be a nice to have, but it's pointless compared to basic water infrastructure. That money is for water infrastructure. That's what it should go for, and if we take it, that's how it needs to be spent.
Yeah. I think there was 11 projects that the council had put out community consultation on.
Yeah.
The top one was infrastructure, which I understand is the only one that all councillors agreed on.
Yeah.
The rest are all pretty much nice to haves to spend that 3.88. Well, actually, I think the budget came to over 4 million. So, you need to stick within your budget. And I thought those 11 projects were actually another indication of council can't stick within their budgets of 3.88 by coming up with 11 options that, equate to over 4 million already. Infrastructure has to be a priority for this town.
Mm-hmm. And also, if you look at something like the money around the airports with the, I can't even remember what the project was called, but when we were given $7 million, I think.
Shovel-ready projects.
Shovel-ready projects, okay. So those sorts of things are great. Can I use another school analogy? Can I go to anyway? Reading Recovery, okay? Reading Recovery is a good project. When I was at St Mary's School, the biggest ticket item on our budget was Reading Recovery. And we got given money from the school, from the government to implement Reading Recovery, let's say $10,000 a year. But the problem was we had to match it with school's $10,000 as well. So it became something that was really expensive for a school that size. And when you look at things like the airport plan and the shovel-ready project, I can just about guarantee to you that a lot more council money will be spent than what's been budgeted on. And that's where we need to watch, again, overspending or spending more than was initially planned. And if you look at the thing around the $3.88 million, just the idea of pushing that above $4 million for projects that aren't related to water, to me, just seems to be completely irresponsible. Mm-hmm. And a 1% rate increase equates to about $350,000.
Yep. So
you're looking again at the equivalent of a 1% rate increase, and it's just wrong. Mm. A amount of money being given to you shouldn't mean that you're spending other money that's not related to that whatsoever.
That's right. Look, we need to move on because we could talk about this all day.
Oh, sorry, Lyn. Yep.
And don't get me started on Hot Aerodrome because that's another pet project for us that we're keeping a watching brief on all the time.
Yeah, we'll just
have an issue with that.
Check out my voting record on that one too.
Yeah. But let's talk about the Civic Centre. So, what is your current position on the Civic Centre debate? Because we know you're one of the famous 5 that's voted in the 6-5, for the existing site rather than the new site. So where do you sit at the moment now it's gone into the review process?
Well, not even the famous 5, probably the terrific 2. So the only people who have voted against the moving of the site from the very beginning are Chris Peterson and I. That's from the very, very beginning. I'll just read from my notes because I don't want to miss anything out. Along with Chris Peterson, I'm the only councillor with a voting record of being against the moving of the Civic Centre from the current site every single step of the way. It's never made any sense to me a move of a facility to another location that's just a short distance away from the current location. So we're not talking about something like moving the facility from, for example, Kilburnie to Johnsonville and Wellington. No, we're talking about a pointless move to a slightly more northern part of town under the ridiculous guise of bring it to Waipawa, that catchphrase which I find really irritating. I'd also like to look at the time frame and the time spent on the negotiations for the proposal for the northern site. This took months and was eventually unsuccessful, and had progress started on the current site many months or now years ago, then the costs that we're looking at today wouldn't be the factor that they've become. Perhaps we'd be on the way, or we'd be close to having a civic centre in place already. It's just gone on and on and on. And we talk about council staff being really busy and having to do a lot of work. Just think about the amount of time council staff spent negotiating on that site, working on that site, and to me it was just astounding. I can't believe it. And I'm also really pleased that councillors have the integrity to change their minds. So the 3 who became part of the 5 who saw the recognised the fact that the move to the northern end of town was completely ridiculous. I just applaud them for it. You know, sometimes we should be prepared to change our minds, and those three did. With the library, like, I'm a massive advocate for libraries. I love libraries.
Educationalist, yeah.
I've always advocated for remaining on the current site and extending onto the property next door that was bought for that very purpose many years ago. And we're fortunate to have wonderful library staff. Like, if you go to the library, I've been going since I came here with my girls, and I go all the time now. They're incredible, the people that work there. It'd be great to see them working in a high-class facility as well. And to me, I see libraries as community equalisers. They provide resources and facilities for those who may not be able to have them otherwise. So if you look at, again, my family growing up, massive users of the town library because it gave us access to things that we certainly can afford to have or buy ourselves. It's hard to know the costs around the new facility, but my discussions with the local developer Dave Borman, as well as information shared by the Masterton Action Group, suggest that the costs could be manageable. But we need to look at local experts like Dave, and he's got a proven track record. And my understanding is that he completed the Greater Wellington Regional Council building on time and under budget. And I don't really know how much we can afford, but you need to look at it as a big picture item. And is it a priority at the moment? Like, the main reasons I used the town hall before it was no longer accessible was to go to the Geraldine in the show every year. As I went there every single year for 17 years because my daughters went to Geraldine, and for school performances and productions and prize givings for Lakeview School. And over the last few years, since 2016, we've managed okay using things like Whakaoriori College, and I know that's not perfect for everyone. And also from the Geraldine and the perspective, just going down to the Carterton Event Centre. I think it would be great to have our own facility in our town. I think it's often the centrepiece of the town. But I really liked the costings for Dave's project. When I first saw, just talking about the Civic Centre, when I saw, the thing that really got me to change my mind, so before I stood for council last time, I was in favour of knocking the whole thing down and starting again, and that was in the Times Age. Then Dave Borman put a proposal in the Times Age. I think it was a 2-page spread, and in it he took the town hall part of the building and he moved it to where that car park is. Yeah. And my wife and I were looking at it, and she immediately went down and did a submission, Lisa. And I love the way it enclosed that square. And to me, it was just such an innovative idea. And when he had that recent meeting at the at Whakaoriori College, I asked the question about that. Was that still something that could happen? And apparently it is. I just think the way it encloses that square would look really, really good.
Anything's possible. It's just how much we want to pay. And I think Dave Borman's proposal is around the 20,000 mark to have it done.
Oh, 20 million, yeah.
Sorry, 20 million.
Yeah.
Because it's built by Masterton people again, for Masterton people, who understand it, who put money in and donate products and all sorts of stuff because it's for the betterment of the community.
Yeah.
Whereas you bring in outsiders, they just want to make money out of it. You know, they're business people.
I mean, I look at Daryl. So I used to teach Daryl's kid James, who now works for him. And Silverwood. Yeah. And there's a guy who seems to be able to create or design a quality facility, but he might not have fitted the criteria for who was accepted to put in a proposal for designing the building. But to me, that seems a little bit unfair. Someone's got to start somewhere. And
so who designs the criteria for designing the building?
It was done by council, so that came to council staff as to who could actually put in a proposal for designing the facility. And Daryl didn't meet that threshold.
And no one pushed back on that and around the council table?
I honestly couldn't tell you, to be honest, ridiculous. But I know there was a lot of push for local people to have a big part.
We should be keeping our money, ratepayers' money, with local people, local industries, local businesses that support the community well-being, because then we all do well out of it.
Yeah, well,
it's crazy what's coming out of council now.
Yeah, well, when you look at local, like I did this personal local campaign a while ago I don't buy anything online, and I buy almost everything I buy from Masterton bricks and mortar stores, like almost everything. I do slip up every once in a while, like I really like my Lululemon hoodie. I just really wanted it, and I bought that online, but probably 95% of everything I buy is from a bricks and mortar store, because we have to support our local businesses. And if you take an organisation like, and we're extending that to Lakeview School as well, so we do all our book purchases now through Paper Plus or Headleys. We used to go off online to buy our things, and that's the way council needs to operate as well.
Yes.
Like I would love council, for example, to buy our books from sourcing from people like David at Headleys and Warwick at Paper Plus. And apparently that's used to be what happened, now it no longer happens. And those two, like David employs, I don't know how many people. I know Warwick employs quite a bit of Pure Paper Plus, so they're ratepayers. So let's support them. Yeah.
Great. Look, we need to move on. So the last question is about amalgamation. So we know that local government reforms are coming.
Yep.
So what is your stance on the 3 Wairarapa councils joining together?
I'm not a supporter of it, to be honest. No. So I see the 3 Wairarapa councils as representing very different communities. A few years ago there was a proposal that was, God, I keep talking about schools, but a few years ago there was a proposal to aimed at having clusters of schools being managed essentially by one board of trustees. Opposition to this was very strong, as school communities are very different in so many ways. Yes, there are things that are the same, but there are many differences. Take, for example, Lakeview School and the 3 country schools to the east of us, Wainuru, Whariama and Tanui. Should these 3 communities be governed by the same board of trustees? In my opinion, no. And I know this is a position that's shared by a vast majority of those associated with the 4 schools. And I see that as a similar thing for our councils. What the 3 councils should be focused on is shared services. Unfortunately, this process seems to have completely fallen over in the last 3 years, and I'm not sure if it's because of a clash of personalities among key figures, but for whatever reason it isn't working in a tangible way. And the example of the dog pounds is one of these. Surely there should be £1 for the Wairarapa in a location that's accessible to all. Having 3 seems to be a completely and totally unnecessary extravagance. Having a standalone Masterton District Council should enable us to address our unique needs and to do so with flexibility and agility without the compromises of what's needed to the towns to the south. And I'm not sure generally what the people feel about this, but I feel that we're really different from the towns to the south. And I think we can do it in a standalone way if we're a lot smarter about some of the things that we do. And if we're talking about 3 waters, this is just a smaller 3 waters in a way, isn't it? You know, you're amalgamating 3 quite different groups into one because it might seem more practical on paper. But look at things like the emerging of the polytechs in New Zealand. What a complete and total disaster what looked like a relatively good idea has become. And I don't support it. I'm a fan of a standalone council.
Cool. Okay, thank you, Tim. We need to wrap it up there. But we thank you for your time today and we wish you all the very best in your election campaign.
Thanks, Lyn. Thanks for the time.
That was Tim Nelson, who's standing in the General Ward. So what did you think? We look forward to seeing some of your feedback.